off on my motorbiking travels again, this time to one of my favourite and often most frustrating places in the world, Eastern Europe. It's October, we've left it a bit late for the weather, but I feel I must experience this amazing route one more time before the tide of Western capitalism takes over completely. As always, I'm joined by my cameraman Steve and ever-faithful sound recordist Sean, who as well as a foil or often cause of my ever-changing moods, is as usual guiding us on our journey. We're riding some 2,000 kilometres from eastern Germany to Poland, back to the Czech Republic, across Slovakia and into Hungary, and journey's end, the stunning city of Budapest. This is the story of riding a motorcycle and every emotion that I possess to complete one of the strangest yet most fascinating motorcycle rides. Welcome to Riding Eastern Europe. Welcome to the final leg of our Eastern European adventure aboard my trusty and incredibly reliable motorcycle. Over the last 3 weeks on the road, we've traversed some of the most fascinating countries and met some of the most eccentric characters this part of the world has to offer. Starting in Chemnitz in East Germany, we've ridden into Poland to the third biggest Polish city of Wrocław, then doubling back across the mountains that separate Poland with the Czech Republic, making our way somewhat sedately to the divine city of Prague. The Czech Republic gave way to Slovakia and on to Bratislava, finally crossing the Hungarian border some 200 kilometres ago. At last, after countless arguments and make-ups, food poisonings and hilarity, Steve, my cameraman, Sean, my sound recordist, and my good self are approaching journey's end, the fabulous Hungarian capital of Budapest. As I negotiate the traffic riding into the Hungarian capital, I can't help reflecting on this mammoth journey, and I have to say I'm sad that it's nearly over. The only thing that keeps me from getting marginally despondent is the excitement of returning to this amazing city again after a 2-year absence to find out how much it's changed or not. After a few dead ends and the usual head scratching with Sean on directions, we finally make it to our hotel and journey's end in some underground car park. Without further ado, time to reunite myself with one of the jewels in Budapest's architectural crown, the fabulous castle towering over the Danube. A great viewpoint to take in the cityscape below me. Well, welcome to Budapest, and after 3 weeks and 1,500 kilometres, we finally made it. And what a great city to finish the journey. Now, in the 19th century, these two towns of Buda and Pest came together to form Budapest. Now, the old town is this side, which is all hilly up this hill with a castle in the middle, and over there is the flat, modern Pest. To be more precise, the coming together of the two cities was in 1873, and the two city names were originally round the wrong way, so it was called Pest Buda, until someone, I guess, said, hang on a mo, wouldn't it sound better round the other way? This part of the castle here is called the Fisherman's Bastion, as it's made up of 7 towers, each symbolising the 7 Magyar tribes that effectively gave rise to the nation that is Hungary today, some 1,000 years ago. Also, this place was once a fish market in medieval times, hence the name Fisherman's Bastion. I've got to say, the church nestling amongst these towers has a roof to die for. Just one interesting fact about the castle here, and also the bridges behind me, is that in the Second World War, the retreating German army blew up all the bridges across the Danube throughout Budapest, but they also, strangely, blew up the castle. So all these little sort of turrets and the walls around the castle, etc., have all been built after the Second World War. It never ceases to amaze me the amount of tourists now here in Eastern Europe. Now, I remember filming the castle here in Budapest about 2 years ago, and there was no one here when I was filming. Just look behind me. It's only about 11:30 in the morning on a weekday, and the place is absolutely packed. Over the other side of the Danube from the castle, Pest was primarily industrial up to about 10 years ago. Now it's a thriving commercial centre with street upon street of designer shops, cafes and restaurants. It's the perfect place to spend an afternoon doing a little shopping. So if you're coming to Budapest for a little bit of retail therapy, the good news is there are millions of boutiques here. The bad news is the prices are more than London. So my advice is come here for the culture rather than the couture. Stick to the culture and you can fill your boots for virtually nothing. But there's no doubt that Budapest is now rivaling or even surpassing Western European cities as regards the price of things, sometimes even more, would you believe, than London. Now, there's no doubting that Budapest is absolutely divine as a city, but I have to say a little word of warning, okay? Budapest has suddenly realised the kind of money that they can make out of tourists. So just to give you an example, right? Here are 3 used coffees, okay? A couple of lattes and a little black Americano. Now, in England, I reckon I'd probably pay about £5 for this, 5 or 6 quid. In Budapest, it's a tenner. And that rivals places like Sweden and Denmark for virtually no bang for your buck. There are also other problems with your potential shopping spree in this part of the world. Oh, that was great. Goulash soup in Budapest. Just a little bit of advice about using credit cards here in Eastern Europe. It's happened to me a number of times. It happened to me last night, in fact, that one finds out that the credit card, I can't use my card because it's been stopped by Barclaycard, not because there's not any money, but because it's been cloned. To get round that, the best thing to do is to go to a bank machine and get cash out and pay for cash in restaurants and clubs and all that kind of stuff, rather than finding that someone's cloned your card and you're stranded. The other thing to do, just for safety's sake, is to have a second credit card, just in case the first one is rendered useless. So, armed with a pocket full of cash, I'm determined to experience a traditional restaurant as it's our last night in Budapest. But as always, Sean has one more card up his sleeve, and this one's a joker. He's promised me that this restaurant called Sir Lancelot is as traditional as you can get in the city. Now, I have to say, I've been to a few restaurants in my time and reviewed a few restaurants, but this one is absolutely and totally absurd. Now, Sean said that it was going to be a traditional Hungarian restaurant, but actually it's a medieval themed restaurant. How fantastic! Well, sarcasm, I suppose, is the lowest form of wit, but the Sir Lancelot is my idea of hell, and it's taking me a while to adjust to the proceedings. I can't quite get what it's all about. Well, obviously I've ordered my medieval ye old Diet Coke. It'll probably come in a tankard or attached to a small piglet. Now, basically, the whole idea, I think, is that you share your medieval banquet with a veritable feast of other tourists, basically. And what's on the menu? Well, absolutely stupid things, okay? Here we go. It's the Red Knight repast. That's the first. Master of the Hunt repast. What does that entail? Appetite drops, in brackets plum. round cake, salted, Master of the Hunt's favourite, breaded dumplings, and a Ouija bone. Now, I have to say, there have been some menus in my time as well, but I haven't got a clue what I'd be eating with that. While I ponder what's going to turn up, suddenly, out of nowhere, comes what turns out to be the start of the evening's entertainment. A belly dancer, not really synonymous with a court of a medieval king. But hey, all this is getting so surreal, I don't really care. Well, I don't know how medieval that was, but it was certainly entertaining. I'm still waiting for my food. As with all these themed restaurants, the food takes about as long as it is back in history that this is supposed to be. If you understood that, you're a better person than me. Well, I'm going to sort out my emotions and come back with renewed vigour after the break. Well, welcome back, and if you've just joined us, I'm trying to enjoy myself on our last night of the trip at the Sir Lancelot-themed medieval restaurant. It's taken me a while to get in the spirit, mainly because I was assured that this place was a traditional Hungarian establishment. After an eternity of waiting, the medieval platter arrives. That's outrageous. This is dinner for three. Three very large people. That's unbelievable. I don't quite know what it is, but it's probably every single kind of meat that you can possibly get in, obviously, medieval times, where you can get medieval bananas as well. A veritable feast. Okay, well, let's tuck in, shall we? Well, I really don't know where to start, seeing as I've got a spoon and a knife rather than a fork. Well, I don't know, really. Perhaps I'll just get medieval about it. What's that, do you reckon? Who goes? Oh, well, that's beef, and that's really nice. Slightly spicy. You got to have your bib on. And the lady comes along and, thanks very much. Great. Puts my little bib on, how sweet. Like going back to school, really. Well, the bib did the trick to get me out of my sulk, and I have to admit, I'm quite getting into it. The key, like everything, is to immerse yourself, and on this occasion, do like the medievals did, and eat as if your life depended on it. Forget the cutlery and just steam in. But looking at the way Sean has taken to this way of eating appalls me. Luckily, I'm brought to my senses by the next period performer, the fire eater. I think that's the medieval gas man. What do you think? Well, I've got to say, actually, perhaps I was a little bit rude about Sir Lancelot. The food is absolutely lovely, actually. And I guess, it's a novel way to spend an evening. So if you want to do something very stupid, it's Sir Lancelot. It's a medieval restaurant, and it's in Budapest. So, our final day dawns over the city, and I, for one, am feeling a little worse for wear as I take a wander to work off the night's successes. Always find riversides are a spiritually calming place to sit. Even more calming, maybe, is to take a trip on one of the huge tourist boats that go up and down the Danube. Well, I've always one for the easy way out. One of the best ways to see Budapest is a little boat trip on the Danube that costs about €10 per person. I'll tell you what, so far, it seems to be rather worth it. And what a boat trip it turns out to be. There are utterly sumptuous architectural delights that grace the riverbank here, and how glorious the morning sunshine is, smothering these stunning buildings in the most heavenly light. If you do want to see Budapest in a relaxed and hassle-free environment, take one of these boat trips. It's fab. Well, it seems rather fitting to finish this series on a boat rather than on my motorcycle. But for those of you that have missed the series, here are my top 10 highs and lows, trials and tribulations, and hints and tips on this memorable journey. Okay, well, here goes in basically journey order. The highs, and the odd lows of this amazing trip. All in all, we've covered around 1,500 to 2,000 kilometres across some of the most fascinating countries in Eastern Europe. So, at number 10 has to be one of the most eagerly awaited historic attractions for me, Colditz Castle. Colditz is about 70 kilometres out of Leipzig in East Germany and was everything I had imagined it to be. Just walking amongst the grounds of this incredible place sent shivers down my spine, and the endeavours that the inmates made to escape were not just stuff of legend, they actually happened. This French tunnel really summed it all up. Now in here is a great example of one of the tunnels. Now it was a French tunnel in fact, and well, over here is a diagram. Now they dropped down this ventilation shaft here, which is just over there, into, this was a wine cellar or something for the Germans, and over here behind a false wall was the tunnel, okay. And it's quite amazing that they sort of chiselled away here. In fact, it took 8 months to go 44 metres, and they only had about 14 more metres to do before they were caught. And after 8 months of work, that must have been an absolute nightmare. And as the French say, quel dommage. At number 9 was the East German Polish border town of Görlitz. Görlitz is a mini Prague, but without the tourists and the commercial tack that accompanies that great city. The main feature for Görlitz is the main square and its cafe society. It's also famous for its astrological clock and sundials of all things. Görlitz is a must if you're on a trip like this. Try and get there as soon as possible before everyone else does. At number 8, it has to be Poland and the third biggest city in the country, Wrocław. Wrocław again has its fair share of fantastic cafe-encrusted squares, but is also famous as the Venice of Poland, with what seems to be a never-ending supply of riverside walks and vistas of stunning architecture. One of my favourite parts of it was the flower market of all things, mainly because it really reflected the vibrancy of the city and also its culture. Definitely worth a day or two of your time, and also at night you can embarrass yourself in the multitude of nightclubs. At number 7 was the ride from Wrocław across the mountains to Prague. It's 200 kilometres of fascinating, challenging and awe-inspiring mountain roads. Frustration was only for the most part. I had to follow Sean in the camera car, so I really couldn't let the MZ stretch its legs. This leg of the journey was also a bit of a low, only because of probably one of my worst arguments with Sean. Sorry, have I lived another life last night? Number 6 has to be the most famous city in the region, the wonderful capital city of the Czech Republic, Prague. Although now heaving with some 23 million tourists a year, still it's something to behold, both culturally and historically. It's a must, even though Sean will only remember it for one thing. He's got food poisoning. He's not happy. And give him his due though, he still has come out and about rather than staying in the hotel looking at the wall and moping. This is mainly due to a small chicken pie he had last night. I've told him to stay away from the fish, so the poor man goes and orders chicken, and this is what happens. And I have to say, mate, I do feel that you're doing well there, because most sound recorders would just sit in the room and go, oh, too little, too new. But at least you're out and about with us, even though you don't talk. I am getting better. At number 5 was the monastery in Kutná Hora, a little town on the way from Prague to Bratislava on the D1 motorway. This place is probably one of the most creepy, humbling, yet spiritually calming places I've ever visited. But it's quite amazing, this monastery was actually just like any other monastery up till 1511. When there was a plague here and about 40,000 people died, and a sort of half-blind Cistercian monk decided to decorate this place with these human remains. This is my second time here. I thought I might just light a candle. This place is unbelievable, and even on my second visit, it still sort of holds incredible feelings for me, actually. I don't know why, but there is just something absolutely extraordinary about it. And I implore you, if you are around Kutná Hora or in the Czech Republic, you've got to come here and just experience it. I've reported on millions of churches and all that kind of stuff, and nothing compares with it. It's just amazing. At 4 has to be Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. It's a tiny place compared to Prague, with only about 400,000 inhabitants, but it's divine and still holds the quaintness that Prague lacks. Also, although the city embraces Western influences and investment, it still retains its local culture and rawness. It was also home to probably the best hotel and the most amazing restaurant on the trip. I will never forget my lunch at the UFO restaurant atop the bridge over the Danube. At 3 has to be the highs and lows of this MZ-1000 Street Fighter motorbike. I've bored you loads about it, but suffice it to say, it's a curate's egg. On the one side, it vibrates and has incredibly challenging looks, but on the other, it handles brilliantly, it's cheap, and is a real individual bit of machinery. It's kept me safe, and I've grown to trust it, both in cornering and its stability on the motorway. If it's time for a new sports bike, you could do far worse than taking this baby out for a trundle. At number 2 has to be my relationship with my crew, Sean and Steve. I've been lucky enough to do a few trips with these guys, and we seem to thrive and survive by ripping into each other on a daily basis. That's, as always, led to arguments and misery one day and frivolity the next. A great diversity of emotions to complement the ever-changing landscape we find ourselves in. And finally, at number 1, it's Budapest. If there was one capital city or place to visit just for a weekend, it would have to be Budapest. It mixes the old and the new, the traditional and the modern, with consummate ease. It may be expensive for Eastern Europe, but hey, what a place to get a real flavour of modern Eastern Europe. Well, there you have it, 1,500 kilometres and 2.5 weeks of riding a motorcycle across Eastern Europe. My only advice is that if you are planning a trip over here, do it over the next 5 years, because otherwise it'll have all gone forever.